No,
Sorry.
your resume is impeccable. So it had to be said.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, let's get started and tell us a little bit about yourself and specifically more on your role as a therapist.
I think you said a lot of stuff, but basically, I really enjoyed making art after school. When I was in high school, I went to therapy early in my age, maybe pre-adolescence. My parents had divorced, so I sought it out. I thought it was a good idea to go into therapy. I loved it. And then I went into the bachelor's in psychology knowing that I would eventually become a psychologist. That was my goal in my head. As I studied, I loved it even more and was blessed to be able to integrate art therapy through the GW program as I was going for my doctorate. So it's been somewhat of a long road, but I've really been blessed to have experienced wide range of different populations, of different settings, being able to come back to Puerto Rico thinking, hopefully I can make a difference and make a change in the mindset of, it's a stigmatized to talk about seeking therapy here and elsewhere, but mostly the Latin Hispanic community has that kind of, we hold back a little too much about
100%.
just seeking therapy and saying I should be going to therapy or I want to go to therapy or I am going to therapy. So right now I enjoy continuing to do the therapeutic work virtually, primarily through Mente Serena, and also contributing to the education in Puerto Rico. So it's been very different experiences have really led me to now be able to feel more comfortable and want to focus more on family, women's issues and anxiety stuff, just because it also affected me a lot. And I think it's a very relevant topic right now after all these traumatic experiences that we've gone through in Puerto Rico and the world. So 100%. That's me about it, I think.
Awesome. That's pretty great to hear that at such a young age, you were kind of forward thinking and saying, I'm going to jump into therapy. You've kind of, I guess, like you said, a long road. We've been on both ends, right? As a patient and now as a therapist. You mentioned stigmas.
And I continue to be in therapy.
I mean, your therapist is a therapist too.
Yes, therapists have to go to therapy as well. We have to stay focused and continue to feel like we have some sense of well-being despite everything we're dealing with. So we're human.
I can only imagine because we get flooded with so much news, right? Negative news, and you're getting flooded with not just the news that we hear, but also stories of others. So I can only imagine that a therapist should seek out a therapist as well. You mentioned stigmas. So I'm really curious, right? What are some of those myths that you've heard of people that don't seek out therapy?
Sound is a little delayed, so bear with me. But some of the myths I've heard primarily within the Latin Hispanic population is, you don't, no se comparten los trapos sucios, like you don't share the dirty laundry from your, house, from your family stuff with other people out there. I think we tend to seek out more maybe religious authorities or like the priest or someone you trust from your religious community as opposed to seek therapy. And that doesn't mean that that's not valuable. I think religion could be a protective factor, very helpful in people's lives, primarily those who are spiritual. But therapy has its place because you base your treatment in research and what's been most effective with certain types of symptoms or populations. So that's one of the biggest ones, I think. People just family-wise and society-wise within the Latin Hispanic communities, we tend to frown upon seeking help, emotional help, because that has a sign of maybe weakness in you, that you couldn't handle it by yourself, or that you are sharing very private, confidential information that's only supposed to be shared within, your family circle or those that are close, but trusted as authorities, like religious leaders and stuff. So I think those are the typical ones, but definitely that's tied to the stigma that's attached to seeking mental health treatment.
100%. I know from perspective of growing up in the States, it always didn't seem so like reachable, right? It always
Mhm.
seemed like this is rich people problems. Only rich people
Yeah.
or rich white men can, or rich people can seek therapy. So I love Tu Mente Serena because y'all make it more reachable for people because now you can do virtual chats. Um, so what would you say to someone that is hesitating, right, to go to therapy? They're on the fence about it. They probably heard a few friends that are doing it and they're like, should I do it too? What would you tell that person?
I would say, what are you waiting for? I mean, there is a reality that for certain populations, it used to be and potentially continues to be a little bit out of reach, be that because it's costly, maybe because you don't have health insurance, maybe for numerous reasons. That's a reality that I want to acknowledge and not just say that it's not real, because it is for certain people. So you have to look for what you can afford and what's offered to
Mhm.
you within your means. But there are options out there. Even that the government offers, so that there are options, and I would encourage that person to consider, if you go to a dentist to do preventative work because you don't want to have to go
Mhm.
running when you have a root canal or something, um, you don't want cavities, right? So you go and you continue to go at least maybe once or hopefully twice during the year. And that's
Mhm.
something that dentists are kind of not the most fun doctor to go visit, but people
Yeah.
do it because they know in the long term it's the right thing to do for their health and their dental hygiene. So the same way, I think we need to start thinking about mental health. Like, I shouldn't be waiting for the crisis to happen and to have lost my marbles and
Mhm.
just really, ¿verdad?, volar el encanto to go seek therapy. Yes, you can do it then, but it potentially will be a much more rewarding experience, and you're going to take so much more out of it if you go when you're just wondering, well, I wonder what's the crooked teeth here or tooth here that's bothering me, or I wonder what happened with
Mhm.
this, that my smile is not the same, right? And you go to a
Yeah.
dentist. Well, when you're wondering what's happening with me and I can't really make sense of this, or I continue to find myself in the same type of troublesome situations or making the
Mhm.
same negative decisions that are not beneficial to me, and you're wondering why, then go. It doesn't have to be like this major life event for you to go seek therapy. It's more helpful to go when you just want to be your optimal self. Just really work on yourself, get to know yourself, know your triggers, and kind of help yourself stay in the path of, okay, this is what genuinely I am, and this is where I want to go. And so you have a support that's unbiased and
Mhm.
that has the knowledge to guide you in the right direction.
I love that answer. And I think you answered the next question, which is how do we destigmatize, right? Like the concept of mental health. And I think you said it. You go to a dentist, right? You go to your doctor, you get a physical, and we use our mind more than any part of our body, right? So why not seek that
Exactly.
out? Probably more frequently than a dentist. You should probably go, personally, I go bi-weekly, and I know many do the same or monthly but yeah, minimum, right? 2 times, once a year. To flip it for you though, on the other end of, where we can influence, what should we as businesses be doing to help this mental health awareness and helping, I guess, our whether it's employees or contractors to seek out mental health.
I, I think the number one thing you should be doing, you're doing, which is talking about it. Having this forum and having me or other professionals kind of share their knowledge, the information that potentially can be helpful to other people, and to even say and destigmatize
I
the
had trouble too.
treatment seeking behavior is important. So you're killing two birds with one stone by saying mental health awareness month is important to acknowledge. Here we are, we're talking to a therapist. So what do you think? So just educating, continuing to bring up that topic, acknowledging, and this is one that I do. I understand not everyone may feel that comfortable, but I like to state, I'm a therapist that I go to therapy.
Mhm.
So that it's, people tend to think, oh, wait, what? But we are humans. It's not like this authority that's like over you, kind of saying, this is what you need to do with your life. That's not the type of relationship the therapeutic relationship is. So I think for Buzzzy and even the employers to be acknowledging of mental health matters here, give trainings to their employees or contractors and explain like the main points of stuff that they want to be sensitive to and how they're going to do that is important as well. So that the mental health day that maybe someone might need, they feel comfortable stating so, you know, that they need to take a mental health day, and that's applauded as opposed to frowned upon, because they're taking care of themselves so they can actually be more productive and be more present and have better relationships within the work environment.
100%. Yeah, I'm waiting for that day that we can get there where it's like normal, just say, hey, I'm not mentally, I'm not there. I need a day off. You mentioned relationships, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're a therapist, you do build a relationship. And I think if you're lucky enough to have one, like I have, it's a great relationship to have, because it's someone that is like, I say it's an extension of me. Like they know a lot of where I've been and where I'm going, where I'm looking to do. If you could offer a checklist, like what are those important things that someone should be looking for when they, right, when they're, I guess, I don't know, like dating to see who the right therapist is for them? What are the things that someone should look for?
I think a question I usually ask people that ask me, oh, can you refer me to a therapist? The number one is, would you like to have a male or a female therapist, or a non-binary? I mean, do you have any particular ideas to the gender or sexual orientation of that person? If that needs to be acknowledged, it's important to acknowledge it to be at the beginning. If they don't care and it's fine, it doesn't matter, the next step I think would be, so what issue is it primarily that you want to be dealing with immediately? If there's something that's high on the list, let's say for me it's like anxiety, then I want a therapist that works with anxiety, and there are different therapeutic models that help with anxiety. The one that's the typical one, I think, has more evidence-based research stuff, CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy. But as we mentioned before, I'm very into Buddhist psychology. So maybe that's the type of therapist I want to integrate, that either has certain values that align with those theoretical orientations, is trained, certified, has some training in that. And then also the reality of virtual versus in person. For example, younger children need in-person therapy. It's hard to conduct therapy virtually for little kids, but teenagers, adults, even I would say from 6 years old on, they could manage virtual if they're verbal. So maybe that's another factor to consider. But at the end, once you have that first session, and give yourself 1, 2, 3 sessions to get the vibe and sense whether the person understands you and you feel understood and valued, then if that's there, if you feel the click, then that's the therapist for you. If you don't feel the click, it's like any other important relationship in your life, you have to look for another therapist and not just throw the towel and be like, no, that didn't work. Because I hated my therapist where they said some stupid comment that just really damaged our working relationship. So I think that la confianza, the trust component within that therapeutic relationship is major. So if you don't get that by the 3rd session, I say it's time to look for another therapist. And feel free to let them know, listen, it seems like this is not a good fit. I want to know if you could refer me to someone who blah, blah, blah. It's fine. I mean, we don't get offended by stuff like that. We rather help you find the correct therapist for you, and than to have you kind of not show up anymore and wonder, you know, what happened? Are they okay? So.
I like how you put it, find the click. It's like any other relationship, right? If you have it, you have it. And I like how you put it in the beginning. I think it's okay to be unapologetic about who you want, right? If you're a woman, to seek out another woman's help, for it to be a woman of color or not. You know, I'm glad that I had asked someone that question. They told me the same thing. Just be apologetic on who you want. If it's a male, it's a male, person of color. Also their
race,
story,
ethnics, language. Yes.
100%. Because it's so important to see yourself in some way, right, in the other person on the other end. And also youth, right? If they're younger or older, sometimes there's things that, it's nothing against them, but that you may not click with
Yeah.
in certain things. So let me get a little more specific. So at Buzzzy, right, we work with freelancers, and our freelancers are at various stages in their careers. They do deal with tough clients. They also deal with difficult colleagues if they have to in the workplace on their day-to-day. And this can create some challenging days. What are some tips you recommend for someone when they're faced with these moments? And because, sometimes your therapist is about 2 weeks away and you're just like, man, I wish I had him today to talk about this. What would you tell them?
The number one thing I would say is do not react. I know that the impulse is to react, like you just want to kind of either snap at someone, say something, like, because we tend to feel like, oh, I don't want them to think that they can, like, that I'm a pushover, or whatever situation that's conflictual. But the truth of the matter is, most likely, if you react impulsively in the moment, it may make you feel better in the moment, short term, but most likely you're gonna kind of mess it up in the long term more. So you're kind of making it harder for yourself in the long run. So my suggestion is kind of, as it could be said of toddlers, let's say, like, you take a time out, like take yourself away from the situation because you're agitated, you're potentially in the fight or flight response. So you're going to be wanting to like confront someone, which potentially won't be helpful. So take a time out, let the wave of those emotions come over you, and let it kind of settle. Once it's settled, and you'll know when it's settled, because then by then you won't care that much to be insulting the other person or saying something. But when it settles, then kind of reassess with yourself. Okay, so how is it that I should best handle this? And then consider a response that will be beneficial in the short term, but also the long term. And that takes some time, and some time so that intensity of the emotions level, but then also time so that you can kind of think it through a little bit more in detail and from a very kind of peaceful state of mind as opposed to reactive.
That's great. Because if you think about it, it's like you're feeding right into it, and then it just gets bigger and bigger. The other person's feeding into it, and then, yeah. No return.
Because the ego gets involved, and then when our ego gets involved, then we're like, oh, I don't want them to think they can do this to me. Oh, they did that a week ago, and I didn't say anything. Now I really have to put them on the price. And we just start this dialogue in the movie, and it ends up in a very negative place. In reality, if we kind of let that guide our decision-making process in the moment.
Yeah, there's a power in just letting it go and walking away, and like, I'll deal with this when I'm ready.
It is harder. I'm not saying
no, it's easier said than done, of course.
It's definitely harder, but you'll feel better because you have your power still. You don't give away your power by reacting, and the other person kind of taking control of your emotions. So in a way, you stay in a position of control. Not that we're, I think control is an illusion, kind of like they said something like that. But you're managing better by not reacting to the person, because once you react, then you're like the fish who bit on the hook. Like, oh, now they have you. They can kind of reel you back and forth by continuing the conversation going, or actions that are happening at that moment. So yeah, I think they can step away, take a time out, let it level, and then and potentially then consult with someone who kind of knows the situation, but is also level-headed, not someone who's
someone that has no like skin in the game. Yeah,
right.
Awesome.
And then you can potentially try something new.
Awesome. So another question specific really to our freelancers and creatives. So we found, according to the Journal of Positive Psychology, right, spending time on creative goals during the day is associated with a higher activated positive effect, such as feeling joy, happiness, and optimism. How do we maintain this flow state of feeling positive for our well-being, right? Like we feel so happy when we're in our work. How do we keep that going?
Well, one, happiness is not a parking spot that you can kind of park the car and then you're forever going to be happy. I think socially we talk about happiness that way. Oh, I want to be happy. Yeah, I think everyone wants to be happy or joyful, you know, most of the time, but that's just not a reality in everyday life. So one is when you find yourself in those with that creative flow moving and making you feel good, of course you should, in whatever manner you can, try to seek that out more. If it's within the work environment context, even better, because then you don't feel like it's a, oh, I have to go to work, right? You enjoy what you're doing. But it may not be the case for everyone. So I would encourage that person to think, okay, so if this is something that I want to seek out, where in the routine of my day can I incorporate it every day? It can be something simple like, I don't know, reading a book or having a journal next to your bed before going to bed because you like to write and you would like to read. Or let's say I like the visual arts. Incorporating, and having kids, it's a little bit of a hassle to just sit down to make art without them wanting to get into the creative process. So then I incorporate it with them, and maybe it's not something that I do by myself, but then I do with the pleasure of enjoying it with others. Maybe in the work context, encouraging other peers at work to kind of have, I don't know, a creative Monday or something. You have to do a little dance because you want to kind of shake off the Monday blues when you get there in the morning or something. So incorporate it, use your imagination and the creativity that you have to bring some of that flow state to the little things that you can do at work, the big things if it's doable for you, ideally. And then also in your personal life, I would include it as part of your routine, even if it's just like 10 minutes every day.
Yeah, I think you mentioned like having something like a paper next to you. I think that's important. So you can like, wait, this is a good state that I'm in. Let me write what's happening so I can recreate this or, seek it out later. I'll throw my partner Nina out there. Like today, she wrote me like, hey, that thing that we did yesterday, that was a good state of work. Like, let's do more of that. So I think that's super important to put that out there. So I got to go with one last question here. So for us, we have a two-sided business. We have our freelancers, our creatives, and on the other hand, we have business owners, which are impacted, right, by the work that our freelancers do. Sometimes it can be hard to delegate the work to others for business owners, right? And to seek out that help from a freelancer when you believe, right, there's no one that can do it better than me. What's your advice to someone that can't delegate and how they should delegate to improve their other areas in life?
I think at the end it gets to a point where you have to choose, either do I burn out, because that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for you to be doing everything, even if you think that no one's going to do it as well as you. So either I burn out or actually grow my business and do a better job at X and Y tasks, right? So once you go through the process of thinking of all the reasons why, yes, you should be doing it, and then kind of realize little by little the challenges you're facing with keeping that up in the long term, which inevitably it will happen, then seek out group resources, be that, I don't know, let's say you need for marketing or something. Go 3 good candidates that potentially you want to interview, pick their brain and really get good.
Buzzzy.com.
At Buzzzy, and then exactly, and then pick their brains, really be picky about it, and maybe even give them an opportunity for a certain period for each one of them, and then you select whoever. But it's just not sustainable to think that you can do it all. Yes, you want someone who has their heart in it as much as you do, that wants to be detail oriented as much as you are, but the truth of the matter is that you can't do everything forever. So at that point, when you kind of find yourself being slapped in the face by the reality of it, then just look for different options and give yourself the opportunity to consider good enough. They're not going to be as good as you, but at least good enough so that you can continue on your path of scaling and growing your business.
100%. I mean, people will surprise you for sure as well. And it's hard to
Yep.
see it in the moment, but there's a concept of you'll go farther with others. Like you might go faster by yourself or quote
I
unquote
totally agree.
faster, but you can go
Yeah.
farther with more people.
And you can have really great relationships, working relationships in your business. But the truth is that those key people that got you to your first million are not necessarily the ones that are going to get you to the 10 million or the billion. So you have to foster and nourish those very special working relationships, but also acknowledging your own and the people's kind of limits, and that, yeah, this is a team for this. Then now I need another type of team that will help me get to another place.
Awesome. We're all going to get there. I think delegating is so important. And like you said, it's great for like that, just mental stability and not avoiding burnout to get to that point. Awesome. Thank you, Maricel. Thank you so much for your time.
You're
Can't thank you
welcome.
enough. Such an important topic for us. And we'll definitely continue to be in touch for this topic and for future events. Thank you all who connected. Really appreciate you connecting with us, and have a great night. Thank you all.
You too.